Happy Saturday, everybody, and welcome back in to Gamecock Central. I'm Kendall Smith, joined alongside of Wes Mitchell. And Wes, we're counting down to kickoff, just a week away from the season opener for the Gamecocks as they face off against UNC in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I know a lot of you guys out there watching are super excited. You've already got your tickets for the game. You're squared away. You'll be here early for College game day, but Wes, tell us a little bit more about today's sponsor and how they might be able to help out if some people don't have their tickets for the game yet.
Yeah, Kendall, you're in Charlotte. Have they figured out about the garnet storm, the garnet sandstorm that is going to be coming their way in 1 week? I got a feeling they have no idea what's coming.
Well, I was just talking to somebody about it this morning, and they actually went to UNC, and we were getting in a bit of a fight because I'm like, you have no idea what's coming your way. UNC football fans don't even compare. They're not in the same hemisphere as South Carolina Gamecocks. So I've already been getting in fights with all these people here that are UNC fans that think for some reason it's going to be a sea of Carolina blue when it's not.
Yeah, and so if you're a Gamecock fan out there, Kendall, and you don't have your tickets yet, really for any game this year, but certainly if you want to be at that season opener, our friends at Game Time and the Game Time app, also online at gametime.co, not .com, .co. This is the fastest growing app as far as ticket sales out there from what I'm told, Kendall. And I actually, you know this, I went to the World Series a couple of years ago. I bought my tickets through Game Time. And anybody out there who doesn't have their tickets yet, they can buy their tickets through Game Time as well. Right now, if you download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Gamecocks. That's our special code here on Gamecock Central. So use the code Gamecocks. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but if it's your first purchase, buy some tickets. Gamecocks as the promo code, $20 off. Forget planning months in advance. You don't have a month at this point. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. They have exclusive flash deals on tickets for other sports as well, but obviously we're focusing on football here. The best part about this, Kendall, the Game Time guarantee, that means you will get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit your account 110% of the difference. So that's the Game Time guarantee. Get the Game Time app at gametime.co.
I mean, you just convinced me right there. If I wasn't working the game and I didn't have tickets, I'd head over to Game Time right now and secure my spot, secure my seats for next week's game. But Wes, so much excitement, so much anticipation around this season opener between South Carolina and North Carolina. And Shane Beamer has talked about it a lot throughout the summer. He's talked about it in the weeks leading up to this season, but one of those main factors of what Shane Beamer preaches week in and week out is competition. And while some position groups are already secured, they know who's going to be starting, they know the two deep, they've got it all down, there are other positions where that might not be the case. So let's start things off there. Questions heading into week one. What position groups are still up for battle in this final week of practice, Wes?
Yeah, I wrote about it on Gamecock Central earlier this week, Kendall, and like you said, there's always the caveat of, hey, every spot is up for grabs, but for the most part, they have a pretty good idea of who's going to be starting, who's going to be going out there next 1 week away, and Beamer, of course, spoke in the middle of the week, so at that time, it was 10, 11, 12, something like that, days until kickoff, but he did say, he admitted he was very open about, hey, here are some spots we are still watching moving forward, moving through this final week of prep before we kick off against North Carolina. No surprise here because it's something we've talked about pretty much all offseason, the offensive tackle spots. As of right now, as of when Beamer spoke earlier this week, both offensive tackle spots up for grabs. The rest of the positions, Kendall, it's more kind of about that rotation. It's more kind of about the backups. Wide receiver is a position where, assuming everybody's healthy, they have a feel for who the starters will be. But you look at those backup receivers, you look at the running back position past the Kerryon Joyner. He's the starter, but still kind of figuring out what that rotation is going to be like behind him. And, of course, even what the rotation will look like with him as the season progresses. Backup defensive tackles is a spot that he brought up. And the backup cornerbacks where South Carolina has a lot of young players. That's a position he brought up before preseason camp even started. So, yeah, some of these things have been solidified. Some guys have kind of grabbed their spots. But still several, as I just said, several spots where there are still ongoing position battles that may go along even into the season.
Well, Wes, you just talked about a couple of spots on offense there that are opened up for grabs as we enter this final week of practice for South Carolina. And the offense has changed a lot over this off season. Obviously, a new offensive coordinator and Dowell Loggins taking over. And you've had the chance to talk to some players. You've gone out to a couple of preseason camp practices. So, from their perspective and from what you have seen, where do you think the comfortability level is as we head into this game next week on offense?
I think it's as high as it can be, considering, like you said, it is a new offense. There is a certain sense of experience you can only get from actually going out there and doing it against real opponents and kind of seeing how what you've been doing all offseason is going to match up with other defenses. I thought it was interesting, Kendall. Let's go to the quarterback position. Talking to Luke Doty on one of our Garnet Trust interviews this week, he sort of just he gave me this without me even asking, so that to me maybe meant even more. He's like, man, we kind of hit the ground running when preseason camp started. Felt like they were well ahead day one of preseason camp from where they have been the last few years. And that sort of spoke volumes to me, considering it's also a new offense. And then just everything you hear about Spencer Rattler. I think when you have a quarterback, when you have potentially an elite quarterback, a guy who has gone through some things, he's been through some on-field hardships, and now has a full year under his belt at South Carolina, has a comfort level with most of these coaches for a full year, and now getting to know Dowell Loggins for the last 8 months or so. I mean, the way everybody, including Clayton White, watching his defense go up against Spencer in practice, the way they just brag on Spencer, it sounds like he is ready to take his game back to an elite level. We saw that when he was a redshirt freshman at Oklahoma. And if you have a quarterback, you have a chance. I think his confidence kind of rubs off on the confidence and comfort level of the rest of this team. This time last year, Spencer Rattler was the new guy. He was a transfer. This year, this is Spencer Rattler's football team.
Well, last year he comes in and he's in some way, shape, or form trying to prove himself not only to a new team, but after a bit of a hard time at Oklahoma to finish things off, he comes in at South Carolina and to end the year last year has a few spectacular games. So he's riding high heading into this season. He's got that leadership under his belt, like you mentioned. And this is a guy that we talked about just a few years ago in the Heisman conversation, right? So we know this is an elite quarterback. We know he has those leadership skills. We know he is that guy this year. And last year he said it, I kind of stepped back a little bit and I let some of the older guys and some of the guys who had been there a little bit longer take over. But this year he feels more comfortable taking on a vocal role, taking on more of the role that you would think of when you think of a quarterback in leadership. So really good stuff from Spencer Rattler, like you said, bragging on him left and right from coaches, from teammates, et cetera, et cetera. But Wes, we know how things go leading up to the season opener. You're practicing, you're getting in the groove of things, you're gelling as a team. And we had the schedule come out a few weeks ago for preseason camp, but this last week heading into the game is a little bit different. So from your perspective, I know you're not at every practice, but what do you think this week looks like for the Gamecocks as they get ready for their game against UNC?
Yeah, Kendall, we'll be digging in, trying to figure out some answers to some of these final questions so that we can tell our listeners and readers kind of what to expect on Saturday. I'm very curious to see how this offensive line, particularly offensive tackle battle, ends up. I think when you look at what everybody kind of expects from Rattler, the key to this season is to give him time to operate, give him time to go throw and run this offense. To me, how they can sort of solidify those tackle positions will go a long way. I think you got several guys. You got Jackson Hughes at left tackle, Ja'Kai Moore in some configuration still at left tackle, Tree Babalade, the freshman, he's working in. Then you got on the right side, Sidney Fugar, Kason Henry, Tyshawn Wanamaker. No shortage of options, but it sounds like they're still waiting on two guys to just grab those two spots and kind of take control. So I think that's something we'll be monitoring for much of the year, much of the season. And all those guys have a chance to impact this team. So I think in some ways it might be a little bit more week to week as far as what that looks like. But if they can solidify those two spots, I really like everything we hear about the skill positions throughout the offense. You got receivers, you got a quarterback, you got tight ends. The running back room won't necessarily be flashy, but I think they can get the job done. ultimately this season comes down to offensive line play, and that's why that's the position I'm going to be focused on for these final 7 days. The addition of Nick Gargiulo, I think, really helps that room. Rashawn Lee has had a good camp. Ja'Kai Moore will be starting somewhere, whether that's left guard or left tackle. It's those final 2 spots that, in my opinion, Kendall, seem to remain up in the air and that people need to pay close attention to.
Shocker, we're keeping a close eye on the offensive line. I feel like I'm repeating every conversation that we had last year, but hopefully this year a little bit more positivity surrounding the offensive line and what they bring to the table for South Carolina. But listen, Wes, I'm sitting here right now in Charlotte, North Carolina, literally looking at the skyline of the Queen City. I can see where College Game Day is going to be set up next week. There's billboards all around, there's signs. Tonight is the Panthers game against the Lions, but I can't wait for a week from Saturday when we've got South Carolina taking on North Carolina in prime time. It's going to be a great way to start off the season. So again, get your tickets on the Game Time app if you haven't already. We appreciate them sponsoring this segment. And Wes, appreciate you, as always, coming on here and chatting with us about everything that the fans need to know. But stay posted on GamecockCentral.com. We'll have plenty more answers to your questions throughout the week, and also follow us on social media at Gamecock Central. For Wes Mitchell, I'm Kendall Smith. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a fantastic weekend, the last weekend for a while without some Gamecock football. So hang in there because it's coming soon.